University, what a pillar of knowledge and a place to gather great experiences, both for learning, career management, friends, and generally just moving on into a new stage in your life. Most people, when they are going to university or college, they are, in their late teens, sometimes early 20s, and it's a completely radical new change and experience for them. For many, it's the first time that they're leaving their home, their parents' home, to go on their own and have their own wings and taste of freedom, man. Freedom, what great idea that is. And it's a lot of fun, But university is also very, very difficult and very stressful. And so, as someone who has been a university student, both as an undergrad and master's and PhD, and someone who teaches at a university, I get asked a lot of questions. And I'm often at the mercy of students saying, please, what do I do? Give me your wisdom. How do I become X, Y, or Z? And what program should I go into? And it's very interesting, because I always give them the same type of advice. And I thought, why don't I just share it with the rest of you, and if it helps other people, great. And that's the purpose of this video, is to help anybody who's perhaps thinking about going to university, whether they're in their teenage years or older. I think you should ask yourself some serious questions. The very first question that I always ask my students, and especially those that are at the different open houses, so they're in high school and they're coming or deciding to go to university, I always ask them and their parents about finances. University isn't cheap, and if you live in places like the United States of America, it's even more outrageous down there for the cost. But up here in Canada, it can still be quite costly. So you really have to ask yourself, do I have the financial means to pay for the tuition and books and any other supplies that you need? Because some programs require extra supplies, like, if you're doing art, you have to buy canvas and painting supplies and all that. So there's extra costs associated with doing that type of program or degree. Do you have that financial backing? Do you have grants? Do you have an income, right, that can help offset that? If you're planning on staying on residence, which can be very costly. I know up here where I am, it's $20,000 approximately for residence. It's very expensive. It can be quite expensive. Do you have the means to pay for that? Do you have a loan? Can you get a loan? Is another good question. Can you get a loan? Do your parents have the financial means to do that? Do you have to get a summer job? So you have to think about that financing. Up here in Canada, and especially in Ontario, we have this sort of like a loan that the government can give you so that you can go to school, which is fantastic. And while you're in school, you don't have to pay the loan, and you get a year grace period after you graduate to kind of get yourself established, and then you pay back your loan with interest, of course, to the government. But it's definitely something to think about, is the finances. Now, most of the time, I'm dealing with students who have already entered university, usually first or second year. And those students often will ask me, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. What program do I do? And what should I be doing, right? They were looking for guidance. And that's great. But my first question to them is always, well, why did you come to university? And I also ask the high schoolers who want to come to university, why? Why do you want to come to university? And you get a range of answers. The most common one I hear is because it's going to give me a job. You hear things like I want to learn. Or you hear things like, my parents just told me. It's something that, my parents have always told me to do that, and so here I am. Those are the three most common answers that I hear. There's some other ones that you hear as well, but I hear those ones a lot. So let's go through them one at a time, because some of these are okay reasons to go to university, others are not. The first one that is certainly not is because my parents told me, or I'm a legacy family. Many of these universities have, where their entire family going back generations have come to that university, so you kind of just have to. That's a dumb idea, right? First off, if you're only going because someone told you to, think for yourself, right? You're your own person. You know what you want to do. If you don't want to go to university, you don't go, right? Think for yourself. That is the worst idea, is just to go because it's expected or somebody told you to. I have, unfortunately, known people, when I was in my undergrad, my first year actually, there were two students that were actually my friends at the time. We were taking calculus, first year calculus together. And this guy was a very nice guy. I remember him, he was so good. He was funny, and I really liked him. I thought he was a really good guy. After that calculus, first year calculus was over, and it was like a half a term, so it went from September till Christmas time, and then after Christmas was your second term, and you took calculus 2. He wasn't there, and I didn't know where he went. So I wrote him on Facebook, and I said, hey, you know, what happened to you? You want to hang out? And he told me he didn't make it, he didn't pass, and he got kicked out of the university, kicked out of the program. Because his program required him to at least get 65 in calculus, and he got somewhere in the 30s. And I said, well, my goodness, you know, what's going on? What's happening? And he said, I just wasn't interested, right? My family told me to go, right? He said, my mom really pushed me to go, and I went, and he didn't like it. He said it wasn't his type of thing, and he got kicked out. And all throughout my university career, I have had friends, colleagues even at the graduate level, who end up having to leave because they realize it wasn't for them, or their heart wasn't in it. And you really have to, right? University is a big thing, not only for financially, but also mentally. It's stressful. There's lots of assignments. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's also a lot of fun. And I think people forget those former parts, that it's not easy. And if you don't hit certain targets, like certain grade requirements, certain courses you have to pass, if you don't, you're out, right? Sometimes you can get away if it's depending on the leeway there in the program. But you generally don't want to be messing that up. And that's what happened, especially in first year. And this is just a tip to all of you out there who might be going to university. In first year, we call it the weeding year, because what we do is we try to weed out all those who are there because they think it's party time, fun time, or because their parents said you have to go and they weren't really interested. We make it a year where we can actually sort of get rid of all those people and just have the ones that are serious. And that's the case, and that happens a lot. So do not go to university if your parents, or it's just expected of you. That's not the right reason to go. Now, the other reason I hear often is, I want to learn. And I love that. As somebody who loves learning and has all these books and things, and I enjoy teaching and learning the material and doing research, right? Conducting research on the impacts that climate change is having on our boreal forest communities. I love that type of stuff. However, at an undergraduate level, you're not really doing much research unless you're doing an honors thesis, and that's in your 4th year. And even then, those are very, very hard to come by in a lot of universities, and it's a very small group because you have to first find a supervisor to work with to even begin that type of thesis type work and that scholarly type of work. So it's very hard to do and get. But most of your undergraduate career is spent learning from textbooks. I mean, I can just pull off the shelf here, this book on genes, okay? Most professors, including myself, often have a textbook that we, especially in the first 2 years of your undergraduate career, you're going to be getting textbooks. Do you know what? You can just read the textbook to get your information. You don't need to go to university for that. And I'll give you a little secret. Most professors at the introductory years, so 1st and 2nd year, oftentimes are teaching directly out of these textbooks. They will take the images and slides and so on from the textbooks. And I've actually been, unfortunately, I've had a number of profs in my undergraduate career that used to infuriate me. I had an ecology professor who, it was my second year, who literally, and I literally read from the textbook. That was your lecture. And that's not just the exception. It happens a lot around university campuses where you have professors who will literally read to you the textbook with little explanation beyond what the textbook gives. That's a problem, because you're paying a lot of money, first off, to attend these places, to learn from these people, when if they're just going to read to you, you can do that yourself, I'm sure. If you got into university, you should be able to read, right? And read decently well enough. So you should be able to do that on your own. And besides the point, I forget the statistic now, but on average, most of the learning that you do in university, like 70%, is on you when you do it at home. We assign readings, right? You've often heard that, and even in high school, there's things that are assigned. In my own courses, we assign readings. For example, when I'm teaching the cellular biology course, and we use this textbook here, this textbook here, I even got things marked out in it. I will assign readings and say, okay, you're responsible for chapters 1 and pages X, Y, and Z, and you read it, right? You can do a lot of that reading on your own. You don't have to go to university for that. You can buy these textbooks and read them. You can go online and read it like primary literature. I teach a lot of upper year courses now, and for most of those, we don't really have textbooks that we assign, because especially in the sciences at least, we give you primary literature to read. And you can read that on your own. A lot of them are open source now, so you can just read them on your own and learn from that yourself. You don't necessarily need to have a professor telling you that. You can do it yourself. The other thing is, which I wish I knew a little bit, because it would have helped me with some of these terrible professors that I've had over the years. Nowadays you have lectures from the top institutions, Harvard, MIT, Oxford, Cambridge, that are posting their entire lecture series online. It's just amazing. It's amazing that you have access to that. If you really want to learn something, you can do that. You can listen to these fantastic lectures at open university sources all over the world, the best institutions, the best professors out there. You can even get those, what are they called, the great courses, where it's like an expert in the field will teach through audio, and you can learn from these excellent professors and researchers and academics from around the world. If that's your goal, just to learn, there's a lot of other sources you can go to before going to a university. The other one that I hear, as I mentioned, was it's for a job, and that's a good one. A lot of jobs require you to have certain credentials and certain types of degrees. For that, I think is fine. That's a good reason to go, right? I have my reason to go to university is because I want to be a nurse. And in order to be a nurse, I have to get a bachelor's of science in nursing. That's great, right? You fall on the right path, the job requires it, you do it. Or you have to advance in your career. In order to get that advancement, you have to have a certain degree or an upgrade. You do it. I get that. I think that's fantastic, and it's a good reason to go. And it's also a good reason to go if you're wanting to learn. If you've tried other things, but you want specific type of knowledge, right? Very specific types, things like science, for example, the hands-on, right? You can learn, as I said, genetics or cell biology. However, you might not have the microscope at home to go and learn how to use this and get that hands-on experience that scientists require, for example, or the telescope, right? You might not know how to work that stuff or have access to it, or the chemical reagents to do chemistry and biochemistry and so on. Then you go to a professor at university for that, because it's a very specific type of training. Now, university is a great place for experiences, and I've heard, not as many as the other three points for a university, but a lot of students tell me I'm going for the experience. That's great. I mean, university is a great place for experience. You can have a lot of experiences at university. However, it's costly. And if you're going just because you want to have some experiences and party and so on, you don't have to go to university for that. I mean, my local university has parties up the streets, and anybody can go. You don't have to be a student. They don't check to see if you're a student. Nobody checks. I could go to the parties hell if I wanted to. Nobody's going to check to see you. So if you're looking for experiences, just walking around campus, you can get the same experiences if you were a student there. So, you have to really ask yourself why you're going to university. And that's my biggest thing I tell students. Why are you here? And if you're here for good reasons, then you should go. If your heart's in it, and that's the thing, you got to have your heart in it. I've had so many people, as I said, so many people who come into my classes who their hearts aren't in it. They're in it just because. That's not a good answer. And by the way, people say, oh, you get a job. That's not always the case. I mean, I heard about this university up north, Laurentian University, here in Ontario, where they got rid of the professors, and there was on the radio they were saying how they talked to one of these professors who had been there for 15 years, and the prospects for her now are nil, right? Because there's so many other people with credentials that are professors that you can go to now, and she's not even sure what she's going to be able to do. She might have to completely revamp her career, right? So just because you go to university, and I don't remember if she had a doctorate or not, but it's very difficult, right? You spend a lot of time going to school, a lot of money. So just remember that. Not every job out there is going to require a degree. So think about that. What job do you want? Not just, I want to go to university, but is there a job in particular? If you're more interested in hospitality, for example, going to university to get a degree in art history might not be the thing to do, right? You might want to go to a college, spend less money, and get a diploma, for example. Or if you aren't sure, and there's a lot of students I meet who are not sure, they're like, what program do I go into? What are you interested in? That's another question I ask students. What are you interested in? Do you like science? Do you like physics? Photography? Do you like, art? I mean, do you like psychology, anthropology, English literature, French? Like, what do you like? And once you know what you like, then you can go and find programs or other experiences like apprenticeships to get your credentials to do the things you like, right? That's what you should do. You need to think about that stuff. And from my perspective, when I was an undergrad, I knew in high school that I wanted to do science. That I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a scientist or a teacher at the time. But I knew I wanted to do science. In particular, I knew I didn't want to do physics. Not because I don't like physics. I think physics is, completely fantastic, and I love physics. I think it's really, really cool and astronomically cool. But I knew that physics was often done more now at that time using computers and simulations, and it's less of that sort of Newtonian type physics where you do those cool experiments in front of you in the lab. There are still some that do that, but they're oftentimes much more computer based, right? A lot more simulations. And even when I took physics at university, every experiment I ever did was simulated. It was all on a computer. And once in a while you'd have like a laser or something, you would adjust it and that, but it was all done with the computers. And that's not my type of thing. So, and if there are physicists out there who are like, well, my job requires me to actually tinker in a lab. As I say, that's the case, but my experience when I was in university taking physics was that's how it was done, and I knew that wasn't for me. And as I said, if you want to be a physicist or anything like that, go check and talk to actual physicists. I'm not a physicist. So when I went to university, as I said that I didn't want to do physics, but I will do chemistry or biology. I wasn't sure. Both I thought were good options. And again, after taking first year chemistry, I realized chemistry wasn't for me. Not because it was too difficult or anything. It was, I was noticing that a lot of the upper year courses, so in first year you got to do all kinds of cool experiments. Just like if you think about a chemist or a scientist, you get that person mixing beakers and test tubes and chemicals, and all that kind of stuff. That is exactly what we did in first year. In second year as well we did that. But in third and fourth year they stopped doing all that, and it was more computer-based stuff, and it was less actually doing things. And at the time our university was sort of getting a lot more robotic type things and more automatic type chemistry, so chemistry en masse, if you will, like industrializing the chemistry in the department. And I mean it's great, but that takes the fun out of it. I like the mixing and all that. And you still did some of that as well, but they were sort of moving on to more computerized. And I'm like, oh, I like the mixing. I like the hands-on stuff. So I realized biology hadn't gotten there yet. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do biology, because I also like biology. And that's what I did. And I just expanded and learned everything I could about biology. And I took physics, as I said, and I took chemistry. So I didn't have the experience. I have a double minor. So I have an honors specialization in biology, and I have a double minor in chemistry and physics. I do love physics and chemistry. I just couldn't see myself. I could see where that sort of discipline was going, and how more and more of it was more computer based. I didn't want to do that. More office sitting, and I didn't want to do that type of stuff. I want to be more hands on. So yes, so you have to know what you want to do. And then once I got into university and I knew that biology after first year was what I wanted to do, you focus on it and you drill in. And I haven't regretted it. I love biology. And now I work with plants in particular. I've always loved plants, and now I'm, a plant physiologist. And it's just a wonderful avenue in part. And this is also why I picked plant physiology, is because you can expand it off into phytochemistry, so the chemistry of plants and their metabolites. So that's the chemistry and biochemistry aspects. And you can do genetics, and you can do physiology, and you can do physics even with them, looking at turgor pressures and different changes in the system, and better efficiency for light capture and harvesting of the light energy. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful discipline, and I really like it for that reason. And that's kind of why I went into it, because I like the other sciences as well. But yes, you need to think about it. And before you go, have a heart-to-heart with yourself. And ask yourself if you think going to university is what you want to do. Are you up for the stress? I'll be honest with you. It was very stressful. I remember freaking out in exams. I remember studying like mad and still only getting a 70. And going, what did I do wrong? It's very infuriating. It can be very difficult and extremely stressful, especially when you have many courses and all their deadlines are in a short time frame. It is unbelievably stressful. Your time management skills have to be a must. So ask yourself seriously why you're going to university, and is it right for you? Not for somebody else who's telling you to do it, but you. You know yourself best. So you should sit down and have a talk with yourself. And if you think university is right for you, then do it. So yes, thank you guys for spending time with me here, rambling on about university. I can go on and on and on about this different stuff. But yeah, please, remember to share, like, and subscribe. Comment down below. What types of things do you have questions about university? Have some conversations down below. And for everything, guys, take care. Please take care. You guys are great. And I hope you all do well, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye-bye.